1832, Pierre Gentil de Bussy, the civil intendant, and General Antoine Avisard, interim governor, decided to drain the marshes at the foot of the Arcades Hill. The Botanical Garden of Hamma was then created on a 5 hectares, 12 acres, area, to make not only a model farm but also a test garden. In 1837, the organization bought a 18-hectare, 44-acre, site under the Fountain of Plane Trees. The garden grew westwards and became the central nursery of the government. The initial site was renamed Little Test Garden until its exchange in 1848 for another piece of land inside the nursery. The garden's principal activity is to provide trees to public organizations and to European settlers. From 1833, production of carmine was added. Auguste Hardy was named director of the Botanical Garden in 1842. Many animal species were introduced to the garden at that time, and it expanded several times. As well as the animal and vegetable produce, industry relating to new technology occupied a lot of space, and employed a lot of people. Between 1848 and 1867 the garden expanded several times, until it arrived at its current configuration. In 1860, a lake was created and an exterior boulevard constructed. The garden was renamed the Acclimatization Garden, French, Jardin d'Acclimatation, in 1861. In 1867, an estimated 8,214 species could be found in the garden. In early August, a FUNSI delegation visited Algeria on his collaboration with Tlemcen, Islamic Cultural Capital 2011 declared by ISESCO, Islamic Educational Scientific and Cultural Organization. On his way to Algiers, they went to one of the most important botanical gardens in the Mediterranean region, the Jardin des du Hamma. This garden with more than 60 hectares was created in the 19th century, although its design dates from the 20th and was conducted by the French architect Reiner. In the garden are located the facilities of the Institut National de la Recherche Agronomique of Algeria. This huge garden of acclimatization, which was the state nursery, was created from what were some unhealthy marshes. The name Hamma means fever in Arabic, and climbs up the hill taking the shape of an amphitheater. It has more than 3,000 different botanical species in its facilities, and its special location on the Bay of Algiers, back to the South Sirocco's, gives a privileged climate and create a beautiful contrast between tropical green and blue Mediterranean, which is perceived in all its breadth from the top. The garden's history. Already in 1867, a few years after its creation, the garden had more than 8,000 species and varieties, among which dominated the economic plants, especially for industrial processes. Thus, we can remark the dye plants such as henna and indigo, those used in the manufacture of textiles like cotton or hemp, and producers of waxes and gums such as Myrica cerifera and Ficus elastic, all being studied and introduced at that time. In addition, it was also cultivated spices, oilseeds like olive trees, castor oil plant, sunflowers, and ornamentals. Later, the garden went through the hands of various public and private managers, changing its layout and its mission, and left and returned to the investigation depending on the resources available in each period. After the Second World War, having reverted to the Algerian state, the garden takes its actual character. It was directed by Mazuz Belmahel, but fell back into a serious neglect during the rioting that occurred in Algeria during the 90s. The garden is now the result of a major restoration began in 2004, and was reopened to the public in 2009. He has since received over 400,000 visitors. It has a small zoo, several leisure facilities such as kiosks, school gardening, and all types of buildings for study and research. It is divided in several areas, including the French garden, with a spectacular view, staircase, and symmetrical that flows into the sea, and the English garden, formed by thick tropical and subtropical forest, ponds, winding, shady paths and sculptures. It is articulated by several avenues, the dragon trees, ficus, bamboos. Otherwise, the Hamma garden is equipped with production nurseries and greenhouses, as well as spaces for acclimatization and investigation of endemic Algerian species. It works also in the in vitro fertilization laboratory and in the seed bank. A job that has only begun, and is worthy of praise and to become an example for the entire region. The Botanical Garden of El Hamma, also known as Jardin des du Hamma, is a 54-hectare oasis in Algiers. This historic and lush garden offers visitors shaded walkways adorned with fountains, diverse plant species, a zoo, and art museums, making it a tranquil retreat near the sea. The garden's story began in 1831 when French colonial authorities initiated the transformation of marshlands at Hamma to create arable land. By 1832, Governor General Antoine Avisard established the site as a test garden aimed at acclimating and studying imported plant species. The garden served practical purposes, focusing initially on cultivating medicinal, economic, and commercial plants. From its modest beginnings, the garden expanded rapidly. By 1837, its size grew from 5 to 18 hectares, with significant improvements in infrastructure and sanitation. In 1900, a zoological garden was added under the guidance of Dr. Joseph Ange, marking another phase in its evolution. The garden gained further prestige in 1930, becoming an agricultural university and a hub for scientific study. The Second World War brought disruption to the garden, as Allied forces occupied the site in 1942, causing extensive damage. Restoration efforts began in 1946, and by 1947, the garden was listed as a National Natural Heritage Site. However, challenges persisted, with Algeria's civil war forcing its closure to the public in 1993. Thankfully, the garden underwent rehabilitation and reopened in 2009, welcoming a new generation of visitors. Today, the Botanical Garden Hamma is managed by the district of Algiers, drawing over 900,000 visitors annually. It also hosts educational programs, with 15,000 schoolchildren participating each year at the Environmental Education School. Recognized as a natural and cultural treasure, the garden continues to serve its original purpose of blending scientific discovery with public enjoyment.